This week in Jamaica Now, guilty. 2 men linked to the murder of Phillip Paulwell's daughter and her mother have confessed. Cowards. Gay rights activist Maurice Tomlinson slams the Supreme Court over its ruling in his bid to challenge Jamaica's Buggery Law. The Jamaica Football Federation says it has fully paid the Women's World Cup team. And why is Ziggy Marley being criticised for supporting Israel? I'm Jovan Johnson and this is Jamaica Now. 2 of the 3 men charged in the murder and kidnapping of opposition lawmaker Phillip Paulwell's infant daughter and her mother have pleaded guilty. The prosecution has not released the names of the 2 men who've confessed. One of the men pleaded guilty to kidnapping and murder and the other to kidnapping and accessory before and after murder. On October 13, the Director of Public Prosecutions, Paula Llewellyn, released a statement noting that 4 persons, Leoda Bradshaw, her cousin Roland Balfour, and Richard Brown and Roshane Miller, were charged in the case. Ms. Bradshaw is believed to be the mastermind after allegedly offering $500,000 to men to kill 10-month-old Saraya Paulwell and her mother, 27-year-old Tashina Patterson. Ms. Bradshaw shares a child with Mr. Paulwell, who is the leader of opposition business in the House of Representatives. The police say the 10-month-old girl and her mother were brutally killed and their bodies burned and disposed of. Attorney-at-law Isat Buchanan says Vybz Kartel's appeal against his murder conviction will be heard by the Privy Council on February 14 and 15 next year. The London-based court is Jamaica's final court of appeal. The hearing was set for April, but Mr. Buchanan says the court granted his application for the case to be expedited after the dancehall star's health scare when he was placed in solitary confinement earlier this year. The Supreme Court ruled on Friday that the constitutionality of 3 sections of the Offences Against the Person Act cannot be inquired into because of the Constitution's Savings Law clause. The ruling means that gay rights activist Maurice Tomlinson's challenge of the Buggery Law is dismissed. The unanimous decision was delivered by Justice David Batts on behalf of a 3-member panel of judges. He said constitutional amendments in 2011 are clear that the Parliament intended to protect laws related to sexual offences from review for unconstitutionality. Mr. Tomlinson has criticised the court for not being bold.
The decision is disappointing, and I think it shows the court's unwillingness to adopt what is a long-standing constitutional principle, which is to give liberal interpretations to rights and a narrow interpretation to restrictions. So they seem to have flipped it and given a liberal interpretation to this restriction, the Savings Law clause, and a very narrow interpretation of our rights. And it is sad that the court wouldn't, one, do what it's constitutionally required to do, which is to protect the rights of minorities, and do its job, and 2, take a very cowardly approach in the face of obvious political, in my view, to keep this law, which is archaic, backward, and it's anachronistic. It's out of step with the rest of the world, and it shows Jamaica in the worst possible light.
And Reverend Dr. Alvin Bailey, who represented church groups in the matter, has hailed the court's decision.
This is indeed a landmark victory for the church in Jamaica and the Jamaica Evangelical Alliance specifically, as we hear a ruling and have witnessed a ruling that represent a stance against the kinds of imposing behavior that disregard the kind of morality and family life that we seek to embrace in Jamaica.
A war of words has emerged between the government and the opposition People's National Party over the 35% fare increase recently announced for bus and taxi operators. The hike is spread over 2 phases, with October 15 seeing a 19% increase taking effect. The other 16% is set for April next year. When Transport Minister Daryl Vaz announced the increase on October 11, this was the response from opposition spokesman on transport, Michael Phillips.
When there's a delay in the increase of fares, you come to the general public and you give them a double-figure increase. In many instances, we know it is hard on the pocket of the commuters. And at the same time, those who are investors have to wait for a very long time to be able to make ends meet by not having an increase that will take care of inflation. And even when you do give them this increase, it still has not taken care of the inflation. And as I've always said, that we have to treat the transport system or the sector itself as a business.
However, at a political rally in St. Mary on October 22, opposition leader Mark Golding sang a different tune. Mr. Golding suggested that the government remove a gas tax in place since 2015 to cushion the economy from the effects of rising oil prices. The government collects approximately $7 billion annually from this hedge fund tax, though it has not been used for the intended purpose. However, Minister Vybz rebuked Mr. Golding over his comments and accused him of being fiscally indisciplined in suggesting a removal of the gas tax. Mr. Vybz also questioned whether the PNP leader was undermining his transport spokesman, whom he said was part of a transport sector group that approved the increase.
And I'm saying to my colleague, transport spokesperson, that I'm well aware, as a veteran politician, that some things are beyond your control. And with a leader-centric party system that we operate, what the leader says goes and what the leader wants goes. But I invite you to rethink your position. Nothing that has been said cannot be discussed among big men, leaders of this country, and stand up so that we can continue to work together to make sure that we get the successes that we so badly need and should have had a long time ago, with a cohesive, disciplined, orderly, respectful transportation system, specifically public transportation.
Mr. Phillips has hit back, though, saying he was not a member of the subcommittee that deliberated on the fare increases before a recommendation was made to Cabinet. Mr. Phillips has since stepped down from the transport group.
I am calling on the Minister of Transport, Honourable Vybz, to immediately withdraw his intemperate and ill-considered attack on the leader of the opposition for reaffirming known positions of the People's National Party to make public transport more affordable for commuters and operators. The opposition affirms that something had to be done for the operators, as the failure of the government to implement sustainable policies had compounded the problems faced by the operators, particularly in rural Jamaica. I informed the Minister from the onset of establishing the Transport Sector Committee that the opposition's participation would not include deliberating on fares. I, therefore, was not a part of the subcommittee which made the recommendation. Minister Vyz's outburst was cheap politics, suggesting differences with the suggestions made by the leader of the opposition and myself, differences that do not exist. It is now clear that the minister intends to use my participation as a tool of division, misleading Jamaica over policy positions developed by the PNP. I have no intention of being used by Minister Vybz. I, therefore, have to reconsider any further participation in the committee if the minister does not go ahead and withdraw his attack on the leader of the opposition.
Meanwhile, residents of Paul Mountain and Top Mountain in St. Catherine blocked several miles of roadway on Wednesday as they protested exorbitant fare increases imposed by taxi operators who serve the communities. The fare to Spanish Town and back for students has ballooned from $150 to $250, while adults now bear the burden of paying $750 for the round trip, a significant increase from the previous $500 round trip fare.
The taxi men just charge whatever they wish to charge. And this is hard on the citizens because most citizens up here are not working, and those who are working small amount of money that cannot even meet their needs.
The taxi fare, they was taking $200 from us. Before the government even raised, and then they put it to $250, right? Yes, let's make it stay on the $250. As the government said, 19%, then put it $300 go down and $350 come up. We can't manage it. We tell one of them other day when I taxi man, you know, so me now, and I'm foreign where I come from. That's how we have money. We can't manage it.
And to date, 63 persons have been charged as the Transport Authority steps up measures to address the overcharging of fares by public passenger vehicle PPV operators. In an update on Tuesday, Transport Authority Managing Director Ralston Smith said the agency has executed more than 90 operations since the fare increase took effect. Mr. Smith said 165 complaints have been submitted to the Transport Authority's newly established database, and to date 145 have been resolved, while the remaining complaints are under investigation. Sport Minister Olivia Grange said she is in dialogue with members of the Reggae Girlz squad and the Jamaica Football Federation, JFF, with hopes of resolving an ongoing conflict. On October 20, the JFF announced that it suspended players who rejected an invitation to turn up for the Gold Cup qualification games against Panama and Guatemala this week. Ms. Grange said she has been careful not to say or do anything that could be seen as political interference in Jamaica's football program. The relationship between the team that had a historic run at this year's World Cup and the JFF has been fraught with problems. It got worse with the non-renewal of coach Lorne Donaldson's contract. And in a letter released on October 21, the World Cup squad said they received information about the coaching, medical and equipment staff in an untimely manner and through unprofessional communication. There are also concerns about payments for their World Cup participation. JFF General Secretary Dennis Chung says a meeting between the parties involved will help solve the issues. He also said the Federation expects to settle all outstanding payments owed to disgruntled members of the senior national team by Friday. The dispute comes amid a presidential election campaign in which the incumbent Michael Ricketts is being challenged by current Vice President Raymond Anderson. Multi-Grammy award-winning reggae superstar Ziggy Marley has been facing criticism on social media over his support for Israel in the war with Hamas. Ziggy, the son of reggae icon Bob Marley, signed an open letter affirming his support of Israel. But many critics believe he has offended the legacy of his father and Rastafarians. Ziggy's wife is an Israeli of Iranian Jewish descent. Media reports are that 700 notable figures, including Hollywood celebrities and executives, have signed the letter, which was written by Creative Community for Peace, a non-profit entertainment industry organization. And that's it for this edition of Jamaica Now, your weekly review of the big news stories. Send us your comments at onlinefeedback@gleanerjm.com. Follow us on X, formerly Twitter, and Instagram at Jamaica Gleaner, and on Facebook at Gleaner Jamaica. Like this video on our YouTube page, turn on your notification, and subscribe today. I'm Jovan Johnson, and before we go, more from the residents of St. Catherine who protested the exorbitant charges being levied by taxi operators in St. Catherine.
We need to do something to show the powers that we need good water supply road and good roads that the taxi fare can be regularized.
We also learned that the school in the area is affected and you are chairman of the school board. Can you address these issues?
Yes, definitely. Well, this morning, about to leave the community and realize that all the roads are blocked, leaving the community. So when I start to now investigate as to what happened, was told that the residents took it upon themselves to block the road, getting the voice of the authorities, based on the fact that about 8 taximen that actually route this area, and all of them have increased their fare to an extent as to where parents cannot afford it anymore, sending their children to school or for them to traverse on a daily basis to work back and forth.
We tell off one of them other day when I taxi man, so me now, I'm not foreign where I come from. That's how we have money. We can't manage it. It's too dear.